Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to another episode of I Didn't Sign Up for This. We are together once again talking about all the things that we didn't sign up for and what we're going to do about it. Carrie, how are you?
Hey, Tim, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing quite well. At least that's
Good,
what I
good.
tell people.
How are you really? We did this already.
Basically. Anyway, what are we talking about?
I want to talk about our friends and our family and ultimately our circle of influence.
Okay.
I think it's interesting. So I drew out a diagram not too long ago because I'm a list person. I love to draw things if I need to brainstorm. I have two dry erase boards in the room I'm in right now because I really enjoy
Nice.
it. And I actually drew out this it's very interesting because I put, we are our primary influencers, and then outside of that we have the people in our lives that mean so much to us, like our dear friends, our family, our moms, right? Like, mom's that next level up for sure. And then you have your coworkers and your acquaintances and maybe your neighbors, right? Because what they do kind of influences your life every once in a while. And then you have the greater outer layer, which is like your community and your government leaders. And this started evolving for me during this time of political unrest and discomfort and everything that was going on in the world. And I thought, what really matters? I know I'm not the only person to do this because you can actually look online. There's tons of other examples very similar to this by super intelligent people as well. But
Well, thank you so much for acknowledging it.
However, I think sometimes when we spend our time looking out into the fog and listening to the voices in that fog more than our own internal voice or the people who are around us in our lives, I think that it creates a conflict and ultimately some confusion and stress. And so that's really where the concept came from my perspective. So I thought it might be good to spend some time on it. I rediscovered that recently, and I like the idea of it.
Yeah, as do I. And you have to realize that that whole notion of the circle of influence or the greater sphere of influence is really a double-edged sword because in the business world, which we all find ourselves in one way or another, we all are in that marketplace of creating value to pay the bills one way or another. That value could be as simple as, hey, I'm going to, dig this drainage ditch for you, to I'm going to create an entire complex business plan to run your entire company and take you public, right? It's a broad spectrum. But that sort of commonly heard about circle of influence has to do with you knowing people who know people who know people who can get you in front of the right people and close deals and make money and all that fun stuff, right? The other side of that is you have close friends and acquaintances who can come in and have a say-so in your life, even though they don't really deserve one. Simply because if anybody who has a vote in anything, must also have skin in that game, right?
That's fair.
And so many times you have like a friendship oriented thing. It could be business, could be relational, could be anything. Somebody comes in and says, well, let me tell you, Sonny, here's what I do. And you got to stop and back up and ask yourself, what happens to that person if it's a bad decision? Because if that person does not suffer with the bad decision they've helped to influence, then they have no vote. They have no right. You can certainly take that under advisement. That's a very interesting point. And I will certainly consider that when I come to my decision that I have to live with, because I have all of the responsibilities for all of the decisions that I have that make my life what it is. And so in my estimation, that circle of influence is a very, very good thing, can be a very, very powerful thing, and it can be an absolutely toxic thing, depending on the context of the decisions that you're trying to make.
I think that's absolutely fair. I think that if you if you are trying to make decisions for your own life, your intuition matters more than anybody else in any of those different circles of influence, right? Like it's funny because spectators show up to two things. They show up to things they care about, and they show up to absolute train wrecks, right? And so when you're a spectator and you're invested in the person making the decision, you your vested interest is in their happiness. And I think the toxic piece is really interesting, because I think we've all had those friends or those people in our lives who felt for some reason they knew more about your life than you did, and the choices that you were making weren't necessarily the right ones according to them. And I think, is that the toxicity that you're referring to?
Well, I think if you've ever heard the German sort of phrase Schadenfreude, right? And
Bless you.
Schadenfreude is, yeah, there you go. Gesundheit. Wrong answer.
Oh.
So,
No, I've never heard of it.
Schadenfreude, if I'm saying that correctly, and I realize I'm saying that probably in my backwoods redneck accent. No, nonetheless, bear with me, because I think anybody who knows what I'm talking about. Schadenfreude is that tendency in the human condition to look upon the train wreck and take some sick pleasure from it, right? They look upon the struggles that you have and kind of feel a little bit better about themselves, or get a little thrill out of it, or whatever happens. The best example of Schadenfreude is in a film, a classic film, fine film. It was snubbed by the Academy, but it's called Napoleon Dynamite. And in that great seminal film, Napoleon Dynamite, there are a couple of characters. One is Napoleon, the other is Kip. Napoleon decides to try a time travel device that he has purchased, well, that his Uncle Rico purchased technically, but he's received this time travel device online that all it does is just shock the crap out of you, right? And so Napoleon mounts the machine at one point in the film, and Kip says, "Are you ready?" "Yep." And he plugs the machine in, and it just starts to he just tenses up. He can't let go of the machine. It's like his back is cramping. It's like, oh, it kills, turn it off. And then the camera pans around to look at Kip, and Kip just gets this evil laugh. And then eventually unplugs the machine, and Napoleon lives to tell the tale. The point being is that as part of the human condition, we do have this tendency to take a little bit of pleasure in other people's suffering. And so you never know if the person that you are taking advice from in that circle of influence is giving you advice that helps you or helps them feel better about themselves, right? And so you got to be careful. You got to realize that there's only one vote in this whole show, and you make it. You are the benevolent dictator of your own life. As well you should be, because you are the world's foremost authority on what you think and how you feel. When you abdicate that power to someone else, it's going to bring heartache into your life. But a lot of people do abdicate that power, because they don't want to take responsibility for the decisions that they've made. They want to be able to back up and say, oh gosh, I really screwed the pooch on that one, but I only did it because so-and-so told me so. And so I'm not personally responsible for my decisions, even though you do have to pay the bills for the mistakes you've made. But you can back up and say, hey, it's not me. I took advice. I took poor advice from someone else. Well, good, man. I hope that helps you sleep at night. But at the end of the day, you still got to pay the bill for the mistakes you made.
But they don't have to blame themselves. It's not something that I have to search internally because I made the wrong decision. It was Tom. Tom gave me the wrong advice. And so it's Tom's fault. It's somebody to blame.
Yeah, that is exactly what people do. And people do it because it goes back to the notion that we've talked about in weeks prior, how people would rather be right than anything else. People cannot accept their personal responsibility, their wrongness about so many things. They can't allow themselves to just make a mistake. Man, crapped in my nest on that one. Time to make a new nest. But they don't. They don't. They have to stop and look at all of these other people in an ironic, sort of twisted way. That affords us the luxury of having the business that we're in with, therapeutics and life coaching and business development coaching, that sort of thing. It's because of the tendency for people, rather than doing their own research and making their own decision, they want to talk to somebody who's kind of been down that road before, who can give them, ostensibly really good advice. The problem is there's no way of really knowing, I mean, there are educational courses and PhDs and certifications and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, you have to kind of engage with someone to know if they're really going to be able to help you or not. And so the first bit of advice I would give to anybody engaged with you or me or anybody else is get a pretty good firm grip on what you want to happen in any given situation before you go to advice for somebody else. Whether that's your therapist or your mom, it doesn't matter. Get a pretty good idea of where you think you are and where you want to be. Decide what your ideal outcome is before you go to someone who can help you get there.
I think that makes sense. I think the fact that, I mean, even from a business perspective, the people who are excelling and moving forward in their careers are the ones who are not afraid to make a decision. They're actually not afraid to be wrong or look stupid.
That's exactly right.
I was telling somebody the other day, I said, the only reason that I am where I am in my career is I'm not afraid to ask a question if I don't understand something. And I'm not afraid to make a decision and be wrong, because I know for every wrong decision, I have a multitude of right decisions that I've made, and you learn from every decision or every choice. And maybe that's the key, right? You have a vote because you're the one who gets the lesson. I don't get the lessons off of your choices and your experiences. I get the lessons off my own. So if we're not actually making those decisions for ourselves, we're not learning those lessons.
That's correct. And as quickly as we hand that decision off to someone else and abdicate our own power, abdicate our own personal responsibility, we create a world where we will never learn and grow and advance. It's going to be incredibly challenging because you've got to be able to get up in the morning and look yourself in the mirror and say, man, I really screwed up. But guess what? I still love you and we can still pull this out and we're going to have to go in a different direction. And I don't know what that is yet, but here's the first thing we're going to try. And then you go try it. And maybe the next morning you're looking at yourself in the mirror going, man, I didn't think it could get any worse, right? I had no idea how bad I could screw it up even more. But guess what? I still love you. You're still worth it. We're still going to win here. We've got to find a way to win. So we're going to try something else. And maybe we'll try this. And, and that really is the layman's, not even the layman's. That's like the backwater redneck version of self-actualization. Being able to just ask yourself what you think.
When you remove your choice from the equation, you literally remove your opportunity to learn the lesson, because you project the responsibility onto the people who gave you the advice versus being responsible for your own choices and your own decision. And it's funny because I never thought about it like that before we started this conversation, because I thought about how I will tell you that I am a strong believer that women need other women. But I want to explain that. They don't just need any women. They need strong women in their corner who love and support them, who have a vested interest in their happiness, because women by nature are competitive, but you can overcome that in a solid relationship with women who support you in your decisions. Now, there is some element still of not your vote. When you open up the conversation with the people in your circle of influence, and you share your thoughts, you share the decisions that you need to make, it's okay to get advice from the people who love you. I would say it's important not to cast a wide net when you're
Right.
asking, because opinions are, everybody's got one.
Right.
I'll leave the rest of that alone. But,
Yeah. Everybody knows
you
how
know,
that old statement goes.
yeah. And the thing is your opinion, if it comes from a place of love and support, then that's fantastic. That's a wonderful thing. The difference is someone who will dictate more than their opinion. They feel the need to have you live your life the way that they would live it if they were in your shoes, which is never true.
That's right. They're never in your shoes. They don't know.
Absolutely. They have no clue because they're in their shoes.
That's right.
And we're all just doing the best we can with what we have, right?
You are.
And so
That's right. You are the world's foremost authority on what you think and how you feel. You're the expert. And so who could tell you better than you in terms of what you want? You might not know how to get it. You might not know how to get there, but you can certainly decide what it is.
I agree. I think that I think, and give me the man's perspective, and I'll tell you why I'm asking, because a few years ago I took that Understanding Men course, right? Where it really dove into understanding ourselves as women and then understanding men. And one of the points that they made is that men don't necessarily lean on their circle the way that women lean on theirs. And I'm not 100% sure that that's true.
No, I don't know. I think there are a lot of guys out there that are very, very quick to tell you, oh man, that's the best advice I've ever heard. And then they'll just do what they were going to do anyway. I mean, that's a cliche, right? That's a cliche among friendships among men. They're like, wow, that's the best advice I've ever heard. That's fantastic. I've never thought about it in that way. That perspective is profound and amazing. But I'm still just going to go get drunk, cocaine, hookers, whatever. That's what they are. Men are beautiful, wonderful, magical creatures, and they also just kind of suck. And they're very just dogmatic and reliant upon their own opinions. That's why it's so important that you form the right paradigms. God, how many times have we talked about that? Right. People form these paradigms that do not get them where they want to be in life. It hurts them. But man, once that thing is in there and rooted, you've got a problem. You've got a problem, because all of the logic in the world is not going to help you change that paradigm. I mean, for me, it took a near-death experience, back when I was having my own problems. And yes, I've had my own problems. I know that's hard to believe.
What?
I don't want to break any hearts, but we've all had our own problems. And sometimes to change, to get out of that paradigm that you are exercising, it takes something really profound. That horse has to buck you off, and then you stand up and dust yourself off and go, man, I shouldn't be riding that horse. I should not be riding that horse. But until it does, it's a real challenge.
I would even venture to take it a little bit further and say that we bring people into our circle of influence that will actually help us make our paradigms true.
That's exactly right. That's not really taking it further. That's an absolute truism. How many times do we do that? We look for people who will tell us what we want to hear. We look for people who tell us what we've already decided to believe. Because most people, most of the time when they're asking a question, they're not looking for a solution or an honest answer or honest feedback. They're looking for somebody to reaffirm to them what they've already decided. And that's completely antithetical to what I said before, right? Mm-hmm. And so, surprise, life is complicated. It's really difficult. Right? So just not 10, 15 minutes ago, we're talking and I'm saying, before you seek advice, get an idea of where you are and where you want to be. Get an idea of, what's next for you before you listen to someone else's advice. But then oftentimes you'll go and listen to someone else's advice and they can be absolutely 100% correct. And you're still going to stay back with that existing paradigm. This is why people go and work with somebody for, a year or 2 or 3 or 5 at a time. I mean, I've had clients for 5 years, 5 years of working through some of the same issues in terms of hitting their goals and getting to where they wanted to be. And that is a long time, especially given the scenario that, when I'm talking to someone about working together from a coaching perspective, I tell them flat out, my goal is to get me out of your life, not deeper into it. I want to get me out of your life. I want you to be able to just have systems and the confidence in place to make these decisions yourself and know that, dating the secretary or driving drunk, that's a bad decisions, right? And that seems so simple because on the surface you'd think, well, obviously it's a bad decision, but I have seen people, talk about what a bad decision it was while having a martini at lunch with their secretary. And so it's like, it just happens. It happens over and over and over. And you make a great big mess. And I'll tell you not to tell too much because I'm not going to share personal information with people that I've worked with, but there is this trap in the world of business in your little circle of influence. And a lot of guys fall into this trap. And the trap is you are married to a woman. And I've worked with guys just exactly like this. You are married to a woman who's been there with you since college days or whatever. And then finally you get the promotion or start the company that really clicks for you, start to make money. And now you're making money. And while your wife that you've been with forever is grateful and appreciative, she's also been watching you, put your pants on and off, and your breath stinks in the morning and it smells bad when you poop. And she knows you, right? She knows exactly who you are. She's very accustomed to it. And adding money into the equation doesn't really change anything for her, right? But you know who is really impressed with your incredible demeanor and your capability and your intelligence is that cute little secretary at work. She's just, wide, doe-eyed, impressed with who you are. And you, as oftentimes as an executive, will make the decision that she's right and your wife is wrong. And you know what, buddy? You are way off base. Your wife knows you. Rely on her. When you start relying on that secretary who tells you how awesome you are and that your farts smell like strawberries, and you're in trouble. You're in trouble. And what will happen, I've seen it happen over and over again, that executive will draw closer to that receptionist or whatever. And pretty soon that person is having conversations about how his wife just doesn't appreciate him. He makes all this money and brings home the bacon and provides for everybody, and just his wife doesn't appreciate him. And you know who was willing to appreciate him? You guessed her. Big brown eyes right there. She loves the idea that she could waltz right into an incredibly, apparently powerful man's, financial situation at very least. And so what that is basically a coyote trap. Because do you know how a coyote gets out of a trap?
Mm-mm.
So a coyote's prancing through the forest and he smells the steak hanging from the tree and he leaps up to get it and comes down and one of his feet will get stuck in the trap and it will slam shut. And now he's got to figure out a way to get out of the trap before the trapper gets back to finish him off. And so what the coyote oftentimes will do is lean down just above where the trap has snapped shut and chew his own leg off because he can't get out. Now, how does that relate to executives in business who are fancying the receptionist because their wife just doesn't appreciate them anymore? In his estimation, well, he finds himself spending a lot more time with that receptionist, and heaven forbid he's stupid enough to actually pursue that relationship at the expense of his other relationship. But should he do that, he is going to wake up divorced with his company gone. If not sold, he'll be bought out because they don't want the drama, right? And now all of a
Right.
sudden he doesn't have the money he had, and all the work he put into becoming who he was. Well, now that's, you're a 45, 50-year-old guy working at Home Depot now. And not every time, not necessarily, but it's a very, very common tale. And guess who doesn't think so much of you now that you've lost your company and your wife took all the proceeds and you're working at Home Depot? Old Brown Eyes. She doesn't give a crap anymore. Now old Brown Eyes thinks, man, what am I doing with this loser? And guess what? She doesn't appreciate you. So what do? Well, now you're talking to blue-eyed cashier at Home Depot about how your wife doesn't appreciate you. And it's a spiral staircase to hell. It really is. And the only way out of it is to chew your own leg off. And I've said those exact words to executives over the years. 2 or 3 of them I can think of, and I hope they don't listen to this podcast because I don't want to say too much, right? But you have to understand, like, this is why I keep my client list private, right? If somebody
Right.
wants to talk about what an awesome guy I am, go, man, talk about him. If you want to hand out my phone number because, man, this guy will straighten yourself out, fine, give them my phone number. They'll call me and I'll say, man, how'd you get my number? Right? I'm basically the Hitch of, do you ever see that movie Hitch?
Yep.
I'm the Hitch of executive coaches because we get right to the real stuff, We don't mess around with the periphery. We don't mess around with my HR department's very bad and my top sales guy is this, that, and the other thing. That's not what's causing your problem, buddy. Let's get to what's causing your problem. I knew what your problem was the minute I walked in and saw old brown-eyed Tits McGee sitting behind the counter. I knew what your problem was. I knew exactly what your problem was. And that's your problem. That's what you're doing. That's why you're having struggles with this company. And you are setting an environment and an example that is floating downstream. And everybody says, hey, well, if the old man can get away with it, why not me? And you are creating a culture that's going to be a nightmare for years to come. Or you follow Ms. McGee and you walk her down the aisle, and then you're even deeper into the coyote trap. It's a bad move all the way around. So what do you got to do? You got to chew your own leg off. You need to go out there and find Ms. McGee a different job and figure out a way to never see and speak to her ever again. And then you've got to go decide what to do beyond there, whether it's, having a serious conversation with your wife or talking to ecclesiastical leaders, or I don't know. People have their own direction in life, But
Right.
the only way out of the trap is to suffer the pain of chewing your own leg off, and it sucks. My advice, don't step into that trap.
Well, I'm pretty sure those coyotes don't go to the pack and go, what should I do in this situation?
They really don't.
So they just make the decision.
They really don't. And so, I'm pretty far afield from circle of influence kind of stuff. But I guess the moral of the story is it's very important who you talk to and who you take advice from, right?
Yeah.
Because like your top sales guy might pat you on the back and say, good job, you got with Ms. McGee. But he's the wrong guy to take advice from, right? He doesn't have any skin in your game. As a matter of fact, if you wind up having to sell your interest in the company or get fired or lose your job or whatever, that's just more blue sky for him, right? And so you got to be very careful about the people you put around yourself, the questions you ask, the answers they give, and then what you decide to do afterward. Because at the end of the day, you were the only one responsible for these decisions you're making.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, and you know who the people are that are truly in your corner, that are you can ask for that consultation, but at the end of the day, it's still just a consultation. You need to take complete accountability for your own decisions and your own actions, and not project it onto someone else just to make you feel like you're doing better than what you really are.
That's right. And, I'm not going to, downplay the importance of having a support network or a sphere of influence that you both exert and receive influence from. It's incredibly important, right? I mean, I said earlier it was a two-edged blade, right? It's a two-edged sword. So that's the ugly edge. The ugly edge is there are a lot of people who don't care about you, who will help you make really bad decisions and either not care or maybe they're doing it nefariously. You don't know. That happens. And so at the end of the day, the shield for that kind of person and situation is simply personal responsibility. If you sit down at night and go, look, whatever I decide to do 100%, I did it. Somebody gave me advice. Was it bad advice? Good advice? There's no such thing. It's just advice. And then you figure out what you're going to do and you take the risks that you're willing to take. But the other edge of that sword will slice through problems in your life and create incredible, immense amounts of freedom. Because it goes back to the old adage of it's not what you know, but rather who you know, right? Mm-hmm. That could not be more true. I hate to tell any errant high schoolers who cannot wait for the day that they're out of high school because they're so tired of living in a world that's just a popularity contest. I got bad news for you, sunshine. It remains a popularity contest by and large, and it will be for pretty much the rest of your life. And that sucks. It absolutely sucks. But it also is, and it absolutely is. And so you've got to find a happy middle ground. I read a book several years ago. This is a book by the name of Never Eat Alone. Keith, it's Italian. Ferrazzi? Ferrazzi. Yep. I don't know.
Yeah. He wrote a book about leading without authority that I absolutely loved.
Yeah.
After.
Fascinating guy, great author. But he writes this book, Never Eat Alone. And man, that book will change your life. It's strictly in the world of business because there will always be a list of phone numbers at your fingertips where you can call somebody and get some help, provided you've offered help. It's a quid pro quo, right? One of the most interesting things about that book, one of the most interesting passages, he talks about running into, and I don't know if it was necessarily him or someone he knew. So he might have been retelling this story. In my head, I pretended it was Keith. I pretended he just happened to know a lot of cool people. Nonetheless, the story goes, he talks to a young man out of Little Rock, Arkansas, who everyone he would meet from the most serious of circumstances to the most casual circumstances, he would get their name and their phone number. And if he could, their address and their birth date and all kinds of information about them. And anybody that he would meet, he would write it down in a book. He would write down and keep up with these people. And then he would just add it to my birthday card list and my Christmas card list. And occasionally I call and see how you're doing. And if he ever had spare time, he would call these people and check up on them and see how they were doing, right? But if you ever ask this guy why he went to such great trouble to meet all of these people, from the lowliest bum on the subway to the CEO of a major corporation, this guy was writing down your information and he was keeping up with you, right? But if you ever ask that guy why he did it, he would tell you flat out, because I'm going to be governor of Arkansas one of these days, and I'm going to know these people, and I'm going to ask them for their vote. Now, this kid, he was in high school at that point. After high school, he, toddled off to college, came back, worked, got his law degree, worked in a law practice, married a girl, I can't remember her name. I think it was Hillary.
Yeah.
Ran.
That's about right.
Yes. William Jefferson Hyde Clinton is who I'm talking about. Now, you might love that guy and you might hate that guy. You might think that guy's an absolute criminal and you might think he walks on water. And I think the truth is somewhere in between. I like we all are, right? Like we all are. But yeah, that guy directly attributes his successes in life, including the presidency of the United States, to his capacity to just keep up with people. He wasn't offering any incredible advice or saving lives or, whatever. Mm-hmm. He was just keeping up with people. And people thought, oh, well, that guy cares about me. I'll vote for him.
Right.
And it really drives the point home. It's a great point. And so don't dismiss having a circle of influence. You don't want to be an island unto yourself. but also don't give the people in your circle of influence too much credit because they don't know what they're doing either. We're all figuring it out every day, all the time. That's the game of life. That's what we play. Figure out how it all works.
That's an interesting point because I'll tell you, as I've gotten into making decisions and for my own life on, in relationships or what have you, it's interesting when you do ask for that perspective from people and they're so far removed from what it's like to begin a new relationship or begin a new job or try to mend a relationship with a family member or another friend, and they forget that they have this idealistic way of how they would respond and how you should respond, when the truth is when they were in those positions, they didn't do anything near what they're thinking you should do.
That's right.
In the relationship or the scenario that you're in. And you have to take that into consideration. I mean, it's one thing, I'm a processor. I process a lot, right? And I like to think through scenarios and think through potential outcomes and think through my decisions. And I mean, I've been researching pools for a year and a half now, trying to decide what I wanted to do for a pool for my house. Like, really, seriously, like some kind of container to put enough water in to swim around in. And I have spent a year and a half debating what I would potentially want to do. And I think it's funny, but as you talk to people, everybody has an opinion on the kind of pool you should get.
Right.
None of them have the kind of pool. Most of the time, none of them have that pool, but they have some kind of idea that you should get that pool. You know what I mean? And it's just interesting. It's an interesting concept. It's, I can give you my idealistic advice. It's just like what it comes down to is we are who we are, but we're also who we perceive ourselves to be, and we are who people perceive us to be. We're all three of those things, and somewhere in there is the truth. And so I think getting advice from your circle of influence is also very, very similar, because I perceived that I would do it in this way, when the truth is, when I went through it, I didn't do it anywhere near that way.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And it's always like it seems to be endemic to the human condition to be willing to offer advice based on things that we have not experienced. We're just very quick to do that. I can remember a person from my early years back, back on the coast, back east, southeast, a guy who suffered from these chronic headaches. And the advice he got countlessly was, you need to drink more water. Mm-hmm. Well, when in fact he had a brain tumor, right? And it's like, oh, I guess it could have been the brain tumor. He realized he had a brain tumor when he woke up one morning and his right eye would not close all the way. No matter how hard he squeezed, no matter how hard he just squinted his eyes, it just wouldn't naturally blink. It just felt funny. And so instead of drinking water that morning, he went to see a doctor. And the doctor found that he had a tumor in his frontal lobe that was pushing on the back of his eye and keeping it open. Now, he lived to tell the tale, right? He lost an eye over it, but he lived to tell the tale. But nonetheless, there are a lot of people there who are very quick to give you what they would suppose is sage advice, when in fact it's just cliche. It's just a cliche, right? It's like, I've had a headache every day for the last 12 years. And if I hear one more person say you need to drink more water, right? It's like,
but did he though? Man. Did he drink more water?
He drank a lot of water on his way to like having that brain tumor removed. Anyway, and so it's like, it's just you've got to be really careful about who you're taking advice from, and is it cliche? Have they had that experience? I remember a guy, this was back in the boating days, right? But a guy is talking to another kid who got not bit by a shark, but nipped by a shark, right? Mm-hmm. They had been diving, and that's actually down in the, like south of Miami, not quite around into the Keys. That doesn't matter. Anyway, he got nipped by a little reef shark or something. And I remember some guy that he was telling about it, telling him this big story about, how you need to carry a knife on your ankle and you stab the shark in the eyeball with the knife. And he's giving him all of this stuff until finally I'm just like, dude, so when did you stab a shark in the eyeball with a knife? Well, big surprise. He never had. As a matter of fact, he'd never even been offshore. He'd been on a boat once or twice, just, in the river, but he'd never been snorkeling out in the reefs.
No, he's never gotten in a knife fight with a shark.
He's never gotten in a knife fight with a shark. Here's what you do though, buddy. I'm going to give you some advice right now. If it ever happens to me again, did it ever happen to you before? Well, I guess not, but I read about it. Anyway, and so that's the problem. You've really got to be careful about who you're taking advice from. And you've really got to be careful that that person you're taking advice from does not have a vested interest in a negative outcome in your life,
Yep.
And because that happens too, believe it or not. And then there's always the good side of it. The good side of it is if you will go out and meet people and keep up with them and help them, and even in small ways, they will be your friend forever, because most people do not have that circle of influence that's looking to help them. They have people around them, but they just don't have that person who is like, hey man, how do I help you get more business? Or how do I help you, keep your marriage alive? How do I help you get in better physical condition? How do I help you get square with God or whatever you believe? Most people just don't have that. That's not a thing in most people's lives. And so if you show up and you're willing to help them where you sincerely can, right? Don't give medical advice. Drink water. You'll be all right. Don't give medical advice, but where you sincerely can help them, help them. And if you can't help them find someone who can help them. And you will build not only a circle of influence, but their circles of influence, i.e. a sphere of influence of people that if you ever actually need something, help of your own, people will be lined up to give you that pat on the back, that endorsement, that loan, that investment into your company, because they know you really care about them. And there is nothing more powerful in life than that. And so I guess in the short run, you've got to, rather than sitting around waiting for someone on a white horse to ride in and rescue you, you need to be shopping for a white horse that you can take out and rescue others. And if you will do that, there will be nothing to be rescued about you. People will be so quick to help you and defend you and get your back and stand up with you that you'll scarcely be able to find yourself in trouble from your terrible decisions that we will all make inevitably.
Ultimately, if you are out saving people and you are kind of setting the precedent, you will attract people who have that similar priority, right? Your circle of influence or your sphere of influence will actually get better.
That's right.
Because it comes back to be the person that you want to fall in love with.
There you go. That's right.
And it's the same kind of thing. Like, be the kind of person that you want to be friends with. Be the kind of person that you want to take advice from.
Right. Because what you will find is that you have fewer and fewer and fewer people to help and save. Mm-hmm. Right? The people that you help, you will draw into your life people who don't need your help. It's the old financial adage is that you earn the average of your 10 closest friends. And so if you put your 10 friends into a room and you can somehow deduce how much money they make, add it all up, divide it by 10, and that's within 2 or 3% of what you earn right now. And it's a freaky experiment, but it works time and time and time again, right? And it doesn't just apply to money. You want a stable marriage? Go hang out with people who have stable marriages. Mm-hmm. You want, fast times on the beach in Mexico? Then, go to Mexico. Go hang out in bars where college kids go to Mexico for spring break and have their wild times. You got to decide what you want, though. It's very easy to decide the wrong things. It goes
That
back
makes
to the
sense.
old adage from playing baseball. I played years and years of baseball. And the earliest, most prolific lesson I learned, what happened just after I got cut from a little league team, if you can believe that's a thing. But that's how bad I was as a 12-year-old, right? A 12-year-old, the little leaguers didn't even want me. But as time rolled on, I wound up playing some pretty serious baseball. But the best advice that I got was from that original coach who let me go, which is to say, know what you're going to do with the ball before it comes to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Survey your life. In this case, you survey the field. There is a guy behind the plate. He bats right, but he tends to pull the ball. And so it's probably going to short or third, possibly left field if he gets a good piece of it. There's a guy on first. And so if I'm in left field and I recover the ball, then I need to throw it to second base to try to stop the guy on first from advancing. If I'm in center field, I need to back up the left fielder, right? At the minute I see him running for the ball, I need to run. If it's deep, I'm going to run and be the cutoff guy. If it is shallow and he's running in, I'm going to run behind him in case he misses it and the ball bounces. I got to get it in field. And every position has things like that. Every position on the field, in any given situation, you can look and pretty quickly deduce what you are going to do if a given thing happens. If the ball comes to you, what do I do with it? You got to know that beforehand. See what happens, especially with these executives that I've mentioned earlier. I've seen so many guys in that executive world who say, look, I will never flirt with the receptionist. Right? I've decided. I've talked about it with my wife. We've talked about it with our kids. It's like, yeah, there's plenty of opportunity for daddy to make mistakes like there is for anybody to make mistakes. I will never do that. I will never do that. And then when the opportunity comes along, you don't most of the time.
Yeah.
However, the guy who's like, it's just a little harmless flirting. I don't know. We'll see what happens when I get there. I can tell you what's going to happen when you get there, son.
You're going to be working at Home Depot.
Get ready to chew your foot off, fool. No, bad move, man. Decide what you're going to do if the situation presents itself beforehand. And to say I can't figure out what every situation that might present itself, you're right. You absolutely can't. You can only figure out about 99% of them. And the 1% is kind of a variable, right? I had no idea that somebody would come out topless with the building on fire, right? I had no idea that there was a gossip columnist standing right there with a camera, right? And but here's the thing, if that's really what happened, then that's really what happened. And you can absolutely explain it. It's explainable. And you're never going to think of that situation necessarily. But here's a situation that you can think about. What happens when you walk out of that office and here's Big Brown Eyes and she's out of gas or she's got a flat tire, right? And she wants a ride home. Now, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Because the best thing that can come out of that is that you wind up with, the appearance of inappropriate behavior. That's the best thing that can happen from that. Best thing that can happen from that, your guys start to doubt you. The people that you lead start to think that you are not rock solid. And how is that any good? That's the best scenario.
Right. Once you lose credibility, you lose everything.
That's absolutely right. Now, when it's as simple as going back in the building and finding your friend or finding somebody that has that reputation of being trustworthy, and saying, come with me. Or we live in a day and age now where it's like, oh, sweetie, I'm sorry, such bad things happen to you. I'm going to call an Uber for you right now. They'll run you home. Right? I mean, there's a reason you're making $500,000 a year as the C class up there. There's a reason. You got the money. Take care of your reputation. Take care of your thing. Decide what you're going to do before it happens, though. That's the magic. Right. Decide right now. But am I going to throw you into, throw the top down on my Benz and throw you in and here, why don't you throw on my wife's sunglasses and scarf so you don't get chilled? No, man, no. Well, have you lost your mind? I don't know. I see so many guys work so hard for so much stuff, and they're willing to let happenstance take it away from them. And it's a bad move all the way around. Anyway,
Yeah.
once again, I'm a little far afield, but it does relate back to circle of influence because I just said so.
There in the end. Bye. No.
Bye, y'all.
No. Bye, y'all. The end. No, I think you're right though, because ultimately you are at the center of your circle of influence. So although we did start off the conversation talking about like the people that want to have a vote in our lives, or the people who want to help us make choices that are so idealistic they wouldn't even make them given the same circumstance. Ultimately, a little pre-planning goes a long way when you are your primary influencer. Right. And we all should be our primary influencers. Every decision we make, ultimately, if I'm presented with an opportunity to just go for something and I want to just go for it, that's my prerogative. Right? Like Bobby Brown said, that's my prerogative. and so ultimately that I think that is where it kind of ties in a little bit. Be smart about your own choices and your own decisions, because you do have to deal with those consequences. Don't let other people make choices for you. Don't let situations make the choice for you.
That is exactly right. I think that's the most dangerous, is letting other people who have no experience make a choice for you. And you will oftentimes take it so that you can back up and say, it wasn't my fault. It's your responsibility. And you have to pay the lawsuit. You have to write the checks. But because you didn't come up with the idea, that it's somehow not yours. Well, and that's completely incorrect. You concurred with the idea and you took action on it. And now you're the one who, is making the alimony payments.
Right.
That's the way life really is. So
makes sense. So make your own decisions. It's okay to ask for people's opinions, but just realize that's all it is an opinion. And try to steer clear of those people who absolutely overstep and try to say, this is the only way you should do it. You have to just drink more water. And that's it. Because nobody knows you and knows your life choices better than you know yourself.
That is correct. That's absolutely correct. And on the flip side of that record, it's a real catchy tune called If You Are Nice and Kind and Loving and Loyal and Helpful to People, You Will Have a Remarkable Experience in Life. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And so it's okay to have people in your life that influence you, that give you rock solid advice. And it's more important to be that person for someone else. But it's incumbent upon you to explain to them that you do not walk in their shoes and you can't possibly know. But with the limited amount I do know, here's what I would do. And if you predicate the advice like that in every situation, you will find yourself with it's not a Rolodex anymore, but your Rolodex will be full. And if you know what a Rolodex is, then you're old enough to work with me.
I think there's an app for that.
There's an app for that these days. That's what I hear. But you know what? It's not the same. It doesn't roll. It doesn't click. It doesn't smell like paper. It just, there's something about just flipping through and just like looking at all your old contacts. I love that. It's like reading a book in a library. It's just a beautiful kinesthetic experience.
Yep.
Anyway, all that aside,
I'm like, dream your life.
That's where we are. Seriously. I think that's where we are. Right. It took a really interesting direction this time around, right?
Yeah.
Because when I first think about circle of influence, right, I think about in terms of the other edge of that sword, right? I don't inherently go to your circle of influence could be incredibly dangerous to you. I go to, hey, your circle of influence will make you wealthy and make you happy and give you friends and comfort and golf vacations and whatever. But man, when you back up and kind of go, but they also could destroy your life if you let them.
Yeah.
If you make really, if you follow advice that you're not responsible for, man, they can destroy your life. You can't do that. And at the end of the day, that's your life that got destroyed, not theirs.
Right.
They'll come visit you in prison or whatever. But okay.
All right. So until next week, dream your life.
And live your dreams.
Bye.
Bye.